Okay, so get ready to go really deep on this one because today we're diving into a system that's going to give you like business X-ray vision,
Yeah.
basically. You've brought us not one, but two kind of crazy in-depth guides.
Yeah, and calling them guides, I think, is an understatement, actually. The VME Master Data Intake and the VentureMap Elite WBS.
Yeah, those are some dense titles.
They are.
But you're right to be excited about this stuff. They go way beyond, I think, what most people think of with business analysis.
Oh, yeah.
It's like data meets storytelling meets, wait for it, heat mapping.
It's true.
To like fully graph out how a business works inside and out.
Yep.
Okay, heat mapping. I'm gonna need more on that.
Okay.
But let's back up a sec so everyone's on the same page. Our listeners are all about efficiency.
Yeah.
So let's start with this VME master data intake thing.
Okay.
It talks about these triage questions, which sounds kind of intense.
Yeah, yeah.
What's the main idea there?
So imagine you are, I don't know, suddenly thrust into a room with the CEO of some company. You don't know much about them.
Mm-hmm.
You've got very limited time to get the most important knowledge out of their head.
High stakes, high pressure.
High stakes. These questions are designed to do exactly that.
So you're not just asking them, like, what does your company do?
Yeah.
It's got to be like, next level.
Next level, yeah. One that really stood out to me when I was reading this, and get ready for it, it's a good one.
Okay.
What is the one metric that if it goes red, tells you the business is in trouble?
Whoa.
Uh,
Just one? Okay.
Just one metric.
Yeah. Wow. You cut through all the noise to figure out what actually matters.
Exactly. And what I think is so interesting is that in the document, the next thing they talk about is feeding that to AI.
Wait, hold on. So we take the answer to that already really, really good question,
Yeah.
and then we get AI involved.
And we have GPC analyze it.
Okay, that feels like cheating.
It does.
That feels like next level analysis.
It is. Think of it like GPT becomes this super-powered research assistant.
Okay.
You get that key piece of information, and you use GPT to extrapolate that into a wider picture of what's going on.
So it's like having a whole team of analysts, but it's just the AI.
Exactly. You can create customer profiles from it. You can start to draft mission statements. You can even highlight blind spots you might have.
That's incredible. Okay, so we got expert level questions to give us a really focused understanding.
Yeah.
And then we have AI to blow it up and
They blew it out.
really get the full picture. Okay, amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the VentureMap Elite WBS document.
Yes.
This thing feels like a whole other conversation.
It's dense.
What is the main idea here?
So if the triage questions are about getting information very quickly, the VentureMap Elite WBS, it's like the blueprint for the full analysis.
Okay.
This breaks it down into organization, customer experience, employee experience, you name it, it's in there.
So it's not just gathering the info, it's like, how do we organize it to make sense of it all?
Exactly. Yeah.
You mentioned heat mapping earlier.
Yes.
And I'm stuck on this.
Okay.
How does that fit into all this?
So imagine a literal heat map, but instead of temperatures, it's showing you the hot and cold points of a customer's experience with a company.
Okay.
So let's say there's a really frustrating return process.
Yeah, I've been there.
It happens all the time. That frustration would show up as bright red on the heat map.
So instead of just saying we should improve our returns, you can actually see where the problems are.
Exactly. It makes it actionable.
Okay, yeah. That makes it way easier to actually fix something.
Yes. And that emphasis on clarity runs through these entire documents. They're not about just filling in spreadsheets,
Right.
They emphasize things like writing a really compelling origin story for the company and even visuals, like with these mood boards.
It's true. Because at the end of the day, everyone loves a good story.
It's true, even in the business world.
Even in the business world.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
To connect with narratives, it helps us understand and remember the information. So instead of just looking at the company's financials, this is how did they even get here?
So we're building a narrative, not just a knowledge base.
Yes.
And that narrative is what makes it all stick.
Exactly.
Now, you mentioned mood boards, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie, that sounds a little arts and craftsy for me, for
It does.
business analysis. What's that about?
So in this context, the mood board, it's about capturing the essence of their brand. The colors, the imagery, what kind of aesthetic are they going for? It's a way to show that in a way that words can't sometimes.
Oh, I see. So you could tell me a brand is sophisticated and modern,
Right.
or you could show me a mood board that's got, sleek lines and
Yeah.
those kinds of colors.
It just clicks.
And just clicks, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really cool.
And that's just one example of how these documents are saying go beyond the traditional.
Yeah.
You know, if they outside the box, use all these different tools we have, including AI, to get a really good understanding of what a business is.
And that's what makes these documents so cool.
Yeah.
They're not just like, here's how you analyze. It's like, here's how you understand.
Yes.
They're giving us a whole new perspective on how to look at a business and how to think about business in general.
Totally.
Now, speaking of which, I kind of want to dig into these essential triage questions.
Okay.
Let's get specific.
Yeah.
How do those questions, combined with the AI, give us these crazy good business insights?
Yeah.
What's the first thing they have us look at?
So after that killer question about the metric, they jump into organizational identity.
Makes sense to me.
Which makes sense, right? Before we can understand what they do, I got to know who they are.
It's like, got to figure out someone's personality before you can predict their behavior.
Exactly, yeah.
So how do these questions help us do that?
Well, they ask questions that are a little deeper than what you'd normally see. For example, why does your company exist beyond just making a profit?
Okay, now we're getting philosophical.
Right.
Yeah,
A little bit.
I like it. That
Yeah.
makes them think about their values.
Exactly. And then you feed that to GPT,
Right.
and it can start to analyze not just what they're saying, but how they're saying it.
So it's not just what they say, it's how they say it.
Right.
Because there's always stuff under the surface.
Exactly, the nuance.
That's so cool.
And that's just one part of organizational identity. They go into values, leadership styles, how they make decisions, all that juicy stuff.
It's like we're building a psychological profile,
We are.
which I love. What's next? What other insights can we find in here?
So from organizational identity, we move on to business strategy,
Okay.
which is how the company works within its market and how it's going to achieve its goals.
So it's like, we know who they are. Now, how do they plan on winning?
Exactly.
I'm here for it.
Yeah.
What else? What other questions do they ask?
All right, this one I also think is just brilliant. If we were meeting 3 years from now, what would have had to happen for you to feel great about your progress?
Whoa, that is good.
Right.
Because it forces them to define success.
Exactly.
It's not just surviving, it's thriving. What does that even look like for them?
Exactly. And that answer right there is pure gold because it shows what they want, but it also shows how well they get the market, what they think is going to be hard. It's their vision of the future.
And if you give that to an AI like GPT that can see trends,
Yes.
that's some powerful forecasting you can do.
Exactly. And this is what I think is so cool about this whole thing. We can use tech to understand things better, but it's not about just giving the AI info and being like, do the thing. We're the ones who get to interpret it, connect the dots, figure out the story.
And these documents, they're our guide.
Exactly.
They give us the tools, they give us the structure, they get us excited to go do the thing.
Yes.
All right, let's get back to the nitty-gritty.
Okay.
What other triage questions are hiding in here?
Okay, well, buckle up because we're entering the world of market and competitive landscape analysis. This is where it gets good. It's like we're putting on our detective hats now, yeah.
Oh, I love a good detective metaphor.
Right.
Yeah.
Examining the scene of the crime, which is, the company trying to take over the market. And these questions are our magnifying glass. They help us see the clues.
Okay, I'm ready to dust for fingerprints. What clues are we looking for in this marketing competitive landscape section?
Well, they start off asking you to identify the main competitors, which makes sense, but then they go deeper. What are the different types of competitors you face? Not just those doing the exact same thing, but those offering alternative solutions to the same customer need.
That's smart, because sometimes your biggest competition isn't someone doing exactly what you are. It's someone with a completely different approach to solving the same problem.
Right. Like, are you competing with taxis or are you competing with, like, ride-sharing apps,
Yeah.
any bikes, any scooters, and
Walking,
walking, exactly.
public transportation.
All of it. And you have to understand that, otherwise you're missing the bigger picture.
Okay, so we're not just looking at who the competition is, but how they're competing to.
Yes. And this section, it goes beyond just like, who are you up against? They also ask about the market size, overall trends, that kind of thing.
So we're zooming out to look at the big picture. Market saturation, potential for growth, those kinds of things.
Exactly. You want to know if the market is already full of players or if there's room to grow. And what could shake things up in the future? New tech, changing consumer habits.
It's like you're not just looking at a photo, you're looking at a video of where the market is going. And you got to figure out if this company can keep up.
Exactly. And this is, I think, where GPT can really shine, right? You start feeding it all this data on market trends, what the competition is doing, the company's own goals. You can start to like play out different scenarios.
So it's less relying on your gut, more on the data.
Way more data-driven, which I love.
That's really cool. But predictions are just predictions. You got to figure out how to like test them in the real world. And that's where the venture map WES thing comes in, right? With this hypotheses map section.
100%. You've got all this intel, now what do you do with it? That's what this section is all about. How do you take all these potential aha moments and turn them into hypotheses that you can actually test?
So instead of saying, I think this company's vulnerable to this competitor, it's more like, if this company's vulnerable to this type of competitor, then we should see X, Y, and Z in their strategy.
Yes. You're bringing the scientific method to business, basically.
Like a business experiment.
Exactly. You've got your hypothesis, you go looking for evidence to support it or disprove it, and then you adjust your thinking based on what you find.
I love that. Because sometimes being wrong is how you learn the most.
100%. Sometimes the most valuable insight is the one that completely changes how you thought about something.
Okay, so we've talked about the outside stuff, the market, the other guys.
The lay of the land, yeah.
But we can't forget about what's going on inside the company. And that's where this business architecture knowledge base part comes in, right?
Yes, we're going under the hood now. This is about understanding how this company actually operates. What are its core capabilities? How does value flow through it?
It's like we're getting a behind-the-scenes tour of their whole operation.
Think of it like you're trying to understand a really complex machine. You got to know what all the parts are and how they work together.
You got to know which gear turns which.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, how are you going to troubleshoot when something breaks down? Or even just figure out how to make it run more smoothly.
Okay, you said core capabilities earlier.
Yes.
Remind me what that means, because I feel like it's an important one for people to understand.
For sure. A core capability is basically, what does this company do better than almost anyone else? It could be some crazy advanced technology they have, or maybe they're just ridiculously good at customer service. Whatever it is that makes them stand out from the crowd, that's a core capability.
That's their secret sauce.
Exactly. And this document, it doesn't just say figure out what their core capabilities are. It's like map them out. Show how they connect to the company's goals, their structure, all of it.
Visually connect the dots, yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, make it impossible to ignore how important those core capabilities are to their success. And speaking of maps, they also talk about mapping out their value streams.
Value streams. Okay, that one sounds a little jargony, not gonna lie. Can you break it down?
Basically, think of a value stream as the entire journey a product or service takes from like a twinkle in someone's eye to the moment a customer is using it.
So from that initial idea to design, production, marketing, sales.
The whole shebang, even after the sale, like customer support, returns, all that. It's about understanding how the company delivers value every step of the way.
It's like a map of the whole customer experience, but from the company side of things.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Right. And when you lay it all out like that, you start to see where things might be getting jammed up.
Where the bottlenecks are. Maybe there's a ton of customer support calls because the product instructions are confusing or something.
Exactly. And if you're the company, that's gold. Because now you know where you need to focus your energy to make things better for your customers.
So it's not just about mapping out how things are. It's about figuring out how they could be better.
You got it. Always be improving. That's the name of the game.
Love it. Now, we've been focusing on what's happening inside a company, all the inner workings.
Yeah.
But they don't exist in a vacuum. There's a whole world out there, right?
So true. The external environment can make or break a business no matter how great their internal stuff is.
Exactly. And that's where I think the strategy nexus part of this venture map thing comes in.
I've got it. It's like, we've built this amazing, intricate model of the company, but now we have to see how well it stands up to the wind, the rain, maybe an earthquake or two.
Because even a perfectly built machine can be thrown off by some unexpected chaos.
100%. We have to look at all of those external factors. What's happening in the market, new technologies popping up, what the competition is doing, even things like political changes or new regulations.
It's like a risk assessment, basically. Yeah. What could trip this company up?
Exactly. And then even more important, how can they adapt to not only survive, but thrive even with those challenges?
So we're not just predicting the future, we're helping them prepare for it.
Yes. It's about using all this analysis to make smarter decisions.
I like it. It's very strategic. So how do we even start to predict the future then? Do we get a crystal ball?
Well, a crystal ball would be cool, but not super reliable. That's where data comes in handy.
Okay, so back to data. That makes sense.
Right. You got to back up your ideas with evidence.
Not just our gut feelings.
And not just looking for data that proves us right either.
Right. Got to be open to being wrong.
Exactly. Because sometimes the most surprising discoveries come when you realize your initial assumptions were totally off base.
That's true. It's about being willing to change your mind when the evidence tells you to.
100%. You know, speaking of evidence, I want to come back to something we talked about earlier for a sec.
Okay.
This whole visualization thing. Because it might seem kind of simple, but these documents are full of it. And for good reason.
It's true they are. I mean, a picture's worth 1,000 words, right?
Sometimes even more. Especially when you're trying to make sense of complicated data.
Or tell a good story with it.
Yes, and these documents give you so many ideas for how to do that. We already mentioned heat maps, but there's also stuff about customer journey maps, flowcharts.
Oh, and don't forget the videos. There are entire sections about making videos to explain different parts of the business.
Oh, yeah. The Culture Deck briefing video and the Brand Style Guide overview video.
It's like we're making a whole movie about this company.
Why not? Because you want to grab people's attention, you know? Make them want to learn more.
Exactly. It's not just about presenting information. It's about presenting it in a way that's interesting and engaging.
That's what makes people remember it.
Okay, so we've analyzed the market, mapped out how the company works, done our detective work, looked into the future. What's left?
The million-dollar question. Where do we go from here? That's what this last section on the growth plan is all about. It takes all that amazing analysis and turns it into an actual plan of action.
It's like we're drawing a map to success.
Right, except this map has to account for detours, roadblocks, maybe even the occasional shortcut. Because nothing ever goes perfectly to plan in the real world.
So it's about being flexible, being able to adjust when you need to.
And knowing when to take a chance when the opportunity presents itself.
I'm ready to hit the gas.
Yeah.
So how does the venture map thing guide us in creating this roadmap?
Well, one of the tools they talk about is creating a 3-year picture.
Okay, what's that? A literal picture.
Well, kinda. It's like a snapshot of what the company wants to achieve in the next 3 years.
So instead of just saying, we want to be successful, they have to define what success actually means for them.
Yes, and it has to be a complete picture, too. Not just about money, but also about their impact on the world, how happy their employees are, all of it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It gets everyone on the same page about what they're working towards.
Exactly. But a 3-year plan can feel pretty big and overwhelming, right? So they break it down even further.
Okay, how do they do that?
They have a section on building out a 1-year plan.
So you take that big long-term vision and turn it into smaller, more manageable goals.
Exactly. Because it's hard to get discouraged when you're checking things off your list every few months.
That's true. Those small wins keep you motivated. But how do they make sure those small wins are actually happening?
Well, this is where it gets kind of fun. They have this whole concept of 90-day rocks.
90-day rocks. Okay, now I'm lost.
It sounds weird, but it makes sense, I swear. Imagine you're trying to juggle, like, 100 balls at once. You're going to drop them all, right?
It's probably not going to go so well.
But if you focus on just juggling, like 3 or 4 really important things at a time, you can keep them going.
Okay, so the rocks are like your top priorities.
Yes. The things that are really going to move the needle for the company.
I get it. You focus on the big stuff, the smaller things kind of fall into place.
And you check in every 90 days to make sure you're on track, make adjustments as needed.
It's a very strategic way to grow.
Very. And speaking of strategic, they don't forget about the data. You need to track your progress, figure out what's working and what's not.
Measure everything so you can make the best decisions.
Exactly. And that data-driven mindset is present throughout these documents. It's about taking the guesswork out of running a business.
I love that. So we're not just flying by the seat of our pants, hoping for the best.
No way. This is about having a plan, being prepared, and using all the tools at your disposal to make that plan a reality, which, honestly, isn't that what we all want?
Absolutely. Now, before we move on, I want to touch on this storytelling element again, because it feels like a common thread throughout everything we've talked about today.
100%. It's not enough to just have the data. You have to be able to tell a story with it.
Because stories are what people connect with, right?
Exactly. Think about it. Would you rather read a dry report full of numbers and charts or listen to someone tell you a fascinating story?
Oh, the story every time.
Right. And that's true for business, too. If you can't connect with people on an emotional level, if you can't get them invested in your vision, it's going to be a lot harder to succeed.
So these documents, they're not just teaching us about business analysis, they're kind of teaching us to be better storytellers, too.
100%. They understand that a good story is powerful. It can change minds, inspire action, and even build empires.
Okay, so we've got the growth plan section. What else is there?
We've analyzed the market, we mapped out the business, but we can't forget about how they're presenting themselves to the world. And that's where this section on building a brand script comes in.
So it's like we've done all the behind-the-scenes work. Now it's time to put on a show.
Exactly. You got to have a killer elevator pitch, something that grabs people's attention and makes them want to learn more.
Because there's so much noise out there, you got to cut through it somehow.
100%. And this brand script is how you do it. But it's not easy. You got to really understand who you're talking to, what makes this company special. It's an art form.
Okay, so what makes a good brand script then? What are the key ingredients according to this document?
Well, first and foremost, you got to know your audience. Who are you trying to reach with your message? What keeps them up at night? What are their hopes and dreams? Once you know that, then you can start to craft a message that really resonates with them.
So it's not just about talking AT people, it's about talking to them, having a conversation.
Exactly. And this is where that storytelling element comes back in. Instead of just listing off features and benefits, you want to tell a story that makes people feel something.
It's about making them feel like they're a part of something bigger.
Yes. And that story needs to be infused with the company's core values. What do they believe in? What makes them different? Because let's face it, people want to support businesses that align with their own values.
It's true. People are way more likely to get behind a company that stands for something they care about.
Exactly. So you got to make sure that's front and center in your brand script, in your messaging, everything.
Okay, so it's not just a brand script. It's like their whole identity.
Yes, and that identity needs to be consistent across the board, from your website to their social media, even how their employees answer the phone. Because every interaction someone has with a company contributes to their overall impression of that brand.
It's about creating a cohesive experience.
Yes, and at the end of the day, that's what makes a brand memorable.
I'm convinced. All right, anything else on brand script before we move on?
Just one last thing. Don't forget a strong call to action.
Right. What do you want people to do after they hear your amazing story?
Exactly. You got to tell them. Visit our website, buy our product, follow us on social media, whatever it is you want them to do, make it crystal clear.
Because a good story without a call to action is like a book without an ending.
Exactly. You got to close the loop.
Okay, I'm sold. All right, so we're back, and I got to say, after that deep dive on the brand script, I'm kind of feeling inspired.
Right. It's powerful stuff, I agree.
I might have to go write one for myself after this.
You should. You should.
But you're right. We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
With all these frameworks and concepts, and it's a lot.
It's a lot to take in.
So let's bring it down to earth for a sec, yeah.
Heck yeah.
Like, let's say our listeners loving this, they're on board, and they want to try this stuff themselves. What's step one?
Okay.
Do they have to go kidnap a CEO, lock them in a room, and hit them with the triage questions?
Well, I mean, a willing CEO is great, but you can actually use these ideas on any business you're curious about.
Okay.
Even if it's just you, like, thinking it through on your own. Let's say there's a company you're interested in. I don't know, maybe one of those apps that delivers groceries.
Oh, very relevant. We all know those companies.
Right.
Okay, so I've got my grocery delivery app. Where do I start?
So put on your triage question hat for a sec.
Okay.
Remember that question about the one metric that could mean trouble?
Yeah.
Imagine asking that about this app. What do you think would be the one metric for them?
That's good. Well, it's all about convenience, right?
Yeah.
And being fast. So maybe average delivery time.
Yes.
If that starts slipping, their whole thing falls apart.
Exactly. You're already thinking like an analyst.
Look at me.
And that's one question, right? Think about all the other triage questions.
Yeah, that's true.
You could learn a lot just from observing and doing a little research online.
And suddenly I've got this whole framework
You do.
for like analyzing a business. Okay, so I'm asking questions. I'm getting some insights. What's next?
That's where our friend, the VentureMap Elite WBS, comes in.
Okay, it's back.
It's back! Remember, it's like the blueprint for understanding how a business works.
Yeah.
You take those insights, those theories you have from asking the questions, and you start mapping out the different parts of the business.
So, like, I could look at their culture deck section to see what their company culture is like.
Yes.
Maybe go to their website, see what their social media is like, even check out their job postings, see how they talk about themselves.
Exactly. What kind of language are they using? What does it tell you about their values?
Okay. And then after that, what, the brand style guide?
Yeah. How are they presenting themselves to the world? What's their whole vibe? What are they trying to say through their marketing, their visuals, all of that?
It's like I'm putting together one of those detective boards.
Yes.
With all the strings connecting the photos.
Exactly.
But instead of solving a crime, I'm solving the mystery of their business.
Exactly. And you can even use those visualization tools we talked about.
Oh, right.
Imagine creating a heat map of the customer experience for this grocery app.
Okay, yeah.
Where are the pain points? Where are people getting frustrated?
Ooh, maybe it's the checkout process. Or like the way they group certain items together for delivery.
Yes. And suddenly you're seeing those problems in a whole new way.
It makes it impossible to ignore, yeah.
Exactly. That's the beauty of these frameworks. They give you a system for understanding businesses in a deep way.
It's like training wheels for my brain.
There you go.
Now I want to analyze everything.
I love it.
But I think the biggest takeaway for me is this idea of storytelling that keeps coming up.
Yes.
It's not just the numbers, it's the why behind the numbers.
It's finding the narrative, right? Because every successful business has one.
They all have that story.
The innovation, the struggles, the moments where they connected with their customers on a human level.
And these documents are giving us permission to go look for those stories.
Yes, to find them and to tell them and to be inspired by them.
So, as we wrap up here, I want to leave our listeners with a challenge.
Okay, I love it.
Next time you're trying to understand a business, whether it's a huge company or just the coffee shop down the street, don't just scratch the surface. Don't just look at their prices or their logo or whatever.
Yes.
Look for the story.
Look for the why.
Because in that story, that's where you'll find the real understanding, the appreciation for what they do.
And who knows, you might even find a little inspiration for yourself along the way.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for exploring with us. And until next time, keep asking those questions, keep digging for those stories, and keep on learning.